Welcome to The Explainer, where we take complex research and, well, we explain it. Today, we're digging into something pretty serious, a hidden management crisis that might just be putting our whole healthcare system on the line. All right, let's just jump right in. The US healthcare system, it's under an incredible amount of pressure, right? You've got this crazy mix of public and private players, a mountain of regulations, and just intense financial strain. So if you're one of the people in charge, you're fighting a battle every single day just to keep the lights on and, take care of patients. And look, the stakes here, they are incredibly high. Think of the whole system as this delicate ecosystem. When one part breaks, the fallout is just devastating. Get this, research shows that when a rural hospital shuts down, the death rate for patients in that area jumps by almost 6%. So we're not just talking about business strategy here. This is literally life and death. So that begs the question, right? What makes running a hospital so unbelievably hard? You have to wonder, are there better tools out there to help manage all this complexity? Well, a recent doctoral dissertation by a researcher named Christopher Gibbons looked into exactly that. He wanted to see if healthcare leaders actually have the tools they need to win this fight. And he had a hunch they didn't, but the reason why? Well, that's the real surprise here. Okay, so it turns out there's this really powerful tool that's been kind of hiding in plain sight in business school since the 1990s. It was designed for exactly this kind of messy, complex situation. It's called the Balanced Scorecard, and its whole purpose is to help leaders see the forest for the trees, to see the bigger picture. So what is it? Think of it like a super detailed report card for an entire organization. It was developed by two guys, Kaplan and Norton, and the whole idea behind the Balanced Scorecard, or BSC for short, is to get leaders to stop looking only at the money. Yeah, financial success matters, of course it does, but that's only one piece of the puzzle. See, to get that full picture, the BSC forces you to balance four different things. First, you've got the financial side. Are we actually sustainable? Can we pay the bills? Second is the customer view. What do our patients think of us? Are they happy? Then there's internal processes. What are the things we absolutely have to be great at day in and day out? And last, but definitely not least, is learning and growth. How do we keep getting better? How do we innovate for the future? When you put it all together, you're making sure the organization isn't just profitable, but it's actually healthy, effective, and, built to last. All right, so this brings us to the investigation. To figure out if anyone in healthcare was actually using this tool, the researcher, Gibbons, went inside a huge U.S. healthcare system. I'm talking massive, dozens of hospitals, over 1,000 different care sites. And he set out to ask the managers there a really simple question. And the question was this: do the people who are actually in charge of strategy even know this tool exists? So he surveyed and interviewed tons of leaders, all the way from the top executives down to the managers on the front lines. And the answer he got back was, frankly, just staggering. Get this, a whopping 58% of the managers he talked to had never even heard of the Balanced Scorecard. Let that sink in. More than half the people whose job it is to think strategically had no idea about one of the most famous management tools out there. This wasn't just a little gap in their knowledge. It was a massive chasm. And when you break it down by who knew what, it gets even more interesting. Sure, at the very top, about 75% of upper management was aware of it, but that knowledge just wasn't making its way down the ladder. It dropped to 42% for middle managers. And for frontline managers, the people who actually have to make the strategy happen on a daily basis, it plummeted to just 27%, a huge disconnect. And that's where we see this really strange paradox. It's not like these managers didn't have any tools. Oh no, far from it. 86% of them were using other things, like KPI dashboards or doing SWOT analyses. They were definitely busy measuring things, but they were completely missing the one tool, the one framework that was designed to tie everything together. So this brings us to the big mystery, right? If managers are already using all these other tools and the Balanced Scorecard is supposedly so great because it gives this whole big picture view, why is it just collecting dust on a shelf somewhere? The study had to dig a lot deeper to get to the bottom of this one. What they found was this really deep-seated resistance to change, something that was just woven into the fabric of the organization's culture. As one manager put it so perfectly,
There was a real if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of attitude. And that way of thinking, it just smothers new ideas before they can even get started.
And it wasn't just one single thing. It was more like a tangled web of barriers that stopped any new strategic ideas in their tracks. So on top of that cultural resistance, managers talked about just not having enough time or people. They talked about this culture of financial dominance, where if you couldn't put a dollar sign on it, it basically didn't matter. And then there was this thing called initiative fatigue. You know that feeling? A deep cynicism that comes from seeing program after program get announced with a big splash, only to fizzle out because there's no real follow-through. But maybe the biggest barrier of all was this huge disconnect between the top and the bottom. One manager said it best: executives are making all the decisions with little effort to get buy-in. Basically, decisions were being made in an ivory tower, completely cut off from the people who actually had to do the work. And that kind of top-down approach, well, it just breeds distrust. It pretty much guarantees that even the best ideas are dead on arrival. So what's the fix? How do we build a better system? The great thing about this research is that it doesn't just point out all the problems. It actually offers a path forward, a kind of cure. And here's where things get really fascinating. Even though most of these managers had no clue about this major strategy tool from the 90s, a lot of them were already thinking about the next big thing. One of them said, "With the rise of AI, I believe we will see an influx of tools." They were already seeing how artificial intelligence could be a total game changer, completely revolutionizing how they manage and measure performance. So how do you bridge that gap between the tools we have now and the ones coming down the pike? The study lays out a pretty clear 3-step plan. First, you have to educate. You've got to build awareness of these big picture frameworks, starting from the ground up. Second, integrate. Don't just throw out the old tools like KPIs. Instead, connect them to a bigger system like the BSC. And third, and this is the big one, include everybody. You have to involve all levels of management in the conversation to break down those silos and turn orders from the top into a real team effort. And that leaves us with a really powerful, maybe even a little scary, final thought. We've got an industry facing challenges like never before, and it's right on the edge of this huge AI-driven revolution. But this study shows a fundamental weakness. So I'll leave you with this question. If managers on the ground don't even know about the best tools we have today, how on earth can they possibly be ready to handle the incredible complexities of tomorrow? The answer to that question might just determine the future health of our most important institutions.